Well, I'd like you to take just a moment, if you would. Take just a moment and reflect upon the worst day of your life. Maybe your car was broken into or your home. Maybe you were the victim of some act of violence. Maybe you remember the sting when you heard the medical diagnosis. Or perhaps the echo of the knock on the door from someone who was there to notify you of the death of a loved one. I ask you to think about those things because oftentimes our law enforcement officers like myself, we deal with people all day long who are experiencing the worst day of their life. And we help them deal with that day in and day out, night in and night out. And our officers, you see, are exposed to this multiple times of this acute trauma, if you will, all throughout the day, all throughout the night, and for years of their career. It's also the fact that our officers know all too well the startling statistics that exist in our lives, in our communities, in our neighborhoods. They know of the facts of where evil lurks amongst us. They know of things such as that in not just our city, but our state and all throughout our nation, there really is that thin blue line that separates order from chaos. They know that here in our local community, that violence has surged and continues to rise. They know that in our state of Indiana, still to this day, on average, a child dies every week from abuse or neglect. They know that throughout our country in the United States, a law enforcement officer is shot on average in the line of duty every 30 hours. And worse yet, in our country, a law enforcement officer on average dies in the line of duty every 52 hours. You see, they're surrounded by that. There compounds around them. And it's in those moments, that experience, that officers, again, like myself and many others, we seek out an opportunity where we could actually interact with someone on perhaps what could be the best day of their life. That is the power that exists within an experience, if you will, of our FOP Shop with a Cop program. Now, as the name implies, most people think of an officer in uniform walking hand in hand with a child, perhaps getting that special Christmas toy, and ensuring that that child experiences some time of peace and joy during the holiday season. But what we have found, and what I found by about 10 years ago deciding to try out the Shop with a Cop program, was that it was the children who showed us more about life than we could ever show them. You see, since that time where I had my first experiences working with two young boys who seemingly were on top of the world until it rolled over them. Their mom had just recently passed away, leaving their dad to raise them by himself, only to find out a few short months later that he was diagnosed with a terminal disease and was expected not to live for just a few more months. It was officers who interacted with that family and said, we need to bring these children to such an event like this, to take a moment just to show them a sense of hope and happiness. And in that, we learned more, again, about life than we were ever able to show them. And since that time, our Shop with a Cop program has grown. I've had the opportunity to actually help work and expand the program. We now have one of the largest Shop with a Cop programs in the country, helping hundreds of children, and it continues to grow. But I think about examples that I have seen, that I have learned through the program. I think of the fact that we had the first female president ever of our city county council. She's proud to say she's a Shop with a Cop kid. Officer Norris on our police department, who was a child that got the opportunity to spend time with an officer in the Shop with a Cop program, radically changed his life and made him want to become a police officer which he has done. And just this year, he had the first opportunity to take a child on their Shop with a Cop experience. But I also think of a young man by the name of Dewan. You see, one night he during the night witnessed his mother being murdered by his father. And our officers who responded that night and saw the terrible situation that had occurred and knew of what he had actually seen with his own eyes, realized that the deck would really be stacked against him in life. They took him underneath their wings, and they made a commitment to Dewan that they would only be a phone call away, and they have continued to stay in contact with him and work with him. And he has been able to see the power of the Shop with a Cop program himself. You see, it's stories like that that remind us of all the things that this season really is all about. We have taken the concept, and instead of just focusing on providing gifts and clothes for the children, we've also found the opportunity to teach them some of the life lessons that even when you're down on your luck and someone extends a helping hand to you, that you have the opportunity to then pay that forward. And we teach them about that. Really, we empower them to see their opportunities to do that as well. So before the children ever arrive to do the shopping experience, we work with them and share with them the stories of officers like Officer David Moore, who sacrificed his life for our community here. And they learn about his sacrifice, but just as importantly, they learn about his service and his character. And so what we ask the children to do is, even as tough as times as they have, before they come there that day, to bring just one canned food item. And they then are empowered to donate that, and all of that goes to the Officer David Moore Food Pantry to help others in the community. And we hear them consistently walk up and place the can in the box and say, "Thank you, Officer Moore." And they're reminded of what that thin blue line really stands for. And still yet, before they shop, they assemble a food box loaded with food that then is to go to a senior in our community. And we teach them the power, again, of helping someone and extending that and paying it forward. Later, a uniformed officer will deliver that food box that will have a card in it signed by that child, maybe a special note, giving that senior hope and letting them know that someone cares about them. And in doing this, we then take on the shopping. And it's in those moments that our officers get to see firsthand that oftentimes the children who seemingly have the least often are the ones who want to give the most. Instead of shopping for themselves, they're often wanting to know if they can buy something for their mom, their brother, their sister. The little girl that we had who only wanted to buy a brand new pillow and a blanket for her sister because they have always slept on just a mattress on the floor and never had their own. The children who want to make sure that their aunt is taken care of, or even offer to buy a gift for the officer themselves. That is what the Shop with a Cop experience is all about. I have to confess to you, I've been asked to share about myself in this. And what I have to tell you is the transformation that it pointed me back to, as it does so many other officers. You see, because it reminds me that this Shop with a Cop experience, it reminds me and it points me back to really the greatest storyteller of all. He was a man that spoke in parables and provided hope to other people. He walked this earth, and he reminded us that it is better to give than to receive. You see, that man's name is Jesus. And he is the reason why we celebrate this season. You see, he's the Jesus of Bethlehem. He's the celebration of his birth in this season. He's the Jesus of Nazareth, who fulfilled the scriptures in time. He's the Jesus of Galilee, who walked on the troubled waters and calmed the storms. In fact, he reminded me that he calms the storms not only within me, but he can calm them within you as well. You see, it was the example of the children The children that often this Jesus spoke of, who in their innocence, yet their significance, shows us the true power of this season. So as you celebrate this year and you reflect, my hope is that you remember the children, you remember their stories, and you remember the sacrifice of our officers. And that young man, DeJuan, you see, he went on and working with the officers who took him under their wings, and they found that he had a high level of creativity. He had a lot of interest in others and interest in art. And as a result, over the last 5 years, he has gone on in conjunction with his aunt to host an annual fundraiser. It's a fashion show. And over the last 5 years, he has come back to our Shop with a Cop, stood in front of the children, reminded them that there is hope, and he's contributed thousands of dollars to help provide a Christmas for each and every one of them. Those are the stories that I hope that you remember. And the story of the one who made this supreme sacrifice. And in that, I say, Merry Christmas.